Now great multitudes went with him.
If anyone comes to me and does not hate his father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, and his own life also, he cannot be my disciple. And whoever does not bear his cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. For which of you, intending to build a tower, does not sit down first and count the cost whether he has enough to finish it, lest, after he has laid the foundation and is not able to finish, all who see it begin to mock him, saying, "This man began to build and was not able to finish?" Or what king, going to make war against another king, does not sit down first and consider whether he is able with 10,000 to meet him who comes against him with 20,000? Or else, while the other is still a great way off, he sends a delegation and asks conditions of peace. So, likewise, whoever of you does not forsake all that he has cannot be my disciple. Salt is good, but if the salt has lost its flavor, how shall it be seasoned? It is neither fit for the land nor for the dunghill, but men throw it out. He who has ears to hear, let him hear.
Before we get into the actual parable itself, which I'm actually going to get you to do, I want to look at the surrounding context, because context is everything. So in verse 25, who was Jesus speaking to? Somebody tell me. Large crowds. So it's obvious that Jesus isn't speaking to his disciples. He's not speaking to the 12 original apostles, but rather he's speaking to the large crowd. So there would have been many people who were following Jesus in order to get something out of Jesus. They might have been following him in order to get a healing or a miracle, or because they thought he was a fantastic rabbi and teacher. So people would have been following him for all different reasons. Now, where does this passage fit into Luke's gospel? I've kind of helped you out here. So if I can get somebody to look up Luke chapter 9, verses 51 and 52, and then another person to look up Luke chapter 9, verse 28. Who wants to get the first? You've got the first, and you've got the 19 over here? Great. So, Lionel? Yep.
Okay. Luke 9, 51, 52. When the days drew near for him to be taken up, he set his face to go to Jerusalem. And he sent messengers ahead of him, who went and entered the village of the Samaritans to make preparations for him.
So he was on his way to where? Jerusalem. Okay. So we see that he's on his way to Jerusalem. And then chapter 19, verse 28. Yep.
After Jesus had said this, he went on ahead, going up to Jerusalem.
Yep. And have you got a title above there?
It says the triumphal entry.
The triumphant entry. So how, the triumphant entry was roughly about a week before Jesus was crucified. Is that right? Yes. Okay. So this parable fits in somewhere between Jesus leaving the north in Galilee, making his way down into Jerusalem, and then before the last week before he died. And therefore, this passage is what we would call the travel narrative or the travel passage. So Jesus is making his way to Jerusalem, where he will die on the cross in order to reconcile humanity back to himself. Now, in short, Jesus said something very, very controversial, doesn't he? In verses 26 and 27, he says, "Whoever does not hate his mother or his father, even his own life or her own life, cannot be my disciple." Wow, Jesus. I thought this was the meek and loving Jesus. So I ask you the question, are we supposed to take Jesus' language literally here or literalistically here? Do you think that Jesus is using hate speech? No, he's not. Jesus is not using hate speech, is he? Can anybody tell me, there must be teachers in the room, what kind of language is Jesus using? Hyperbole, never to be pronounced hyperbole. You got it. Now, what is hyperbole? Exaggerated speech, isn't it? It uses exaggerated speech or exaggerated stories in order to make a point. Now, what is the main point that Jesus is making here? Well, his main point is our devotion to Jesus or our love for Jesus must surpass all other loves. So Jesus is making his way to the cross where he will demonstrate not man's love for the world, but God's love for the world. This is why Jesus needs to be truly human and truly divine. Because if he's not truly divine, he can't demonstrate God's love. So he is making his way to the cross where he will demonstrate God's love to the world. And in return, he sort of, people who have been following him, he throws out this challenge and he says, hey, in the same way that there is a cross for me to bear, there is a cross for you to bear. And I think it sort of builds upon what Paul was talking about before. It's about love. So what Jesus is really saying here is family, career, comfort, even our own dreams must be submitted to Jesus. So it's really about being truly devoted to Jesus. Now, just with the person next to you, what we're going to do is we're going to take 1 minute. I want you to just chat to the person next to you on what you think the tower builder parable is all about, or the story. And then you're going to take another minute and the other person is going to share with you what they believe that the warrior king going to war is about. And then I'm going to get you to tell me what the parable is about. On you go. Okay, how did we all go? Is there any brave person in the room that wants to raise their hand in regards to the builder? So what is the builder story about? Listen, there might be a wrong answer and I'll correct you. No, I'm joking. No, listen, we don't want to put anybody down. I'm happy for just somebody to give it a go. It's really simple, by the way. It's not rocket science here. So what do you think the builder is about? Somebody? Yes? Sorry? Planning for the future, yeah. And so in order to plan for that future, you've got to what? If a builder is going to begin building, what's he got to do? He's got to consider the cost and whether he can actually afford to finish the building. My old man's a builder, and I can tell you that if you plan to build something and you can't afford it, there's a lot of shame towards the end. Anybody else? Okay, the king. Oh, I thought you were going to say something. So you're looking enthusiastically here. Yeah, yep. So it's about counting the cost, making sure that you're actually able to go there, which we would talk about having a strategy, wouldn't we? And looking at the strengths and the weaknesses of that. So, yep.
I wondered whether the king was prepared to forsake his.
Yep.
You know, that's what it renounce all that he has.
So to renounce, yes.
Yeah, to sacrifice that to save us.
Yeah, that's right.
And his citizens.
So he's got to be thinking about the whole picture here.
Yeah.
I was reading a story yesterday about criticism. Yeah. And it's so easy to criticize our kings or our leaders from a distance, and yet when they start to say, hey, can you take the burden of tax off me, but then a teacher comes along, you kind of get the picture, but most of the time it's the king or it's the leader who's actually counting the cost all the time, because if he takes the levies down for the tradesperson, then he's got to put the tax up somewhere else. It's going to affect the teacher. So often there is that part where we need to count the cost, but not just for the individual. You're counting the cost for the collective. So both parables emphasize foresight, seriousness, and full commitment. And so what the context here is about giving up everything to come and to follow Jesus. Now, for those in my church, in a couple of months, I will be doing a 6-part series on the 6 different calls of Jesus. And this actually comes towards the very end. It's a high challenge. The earlier ones are like, come and see, come follow me, come and abide with me and come love with me. But then when we receive the love, then there's that aspect of going out and being disciples of Jesus. So discipleship is really therefore saying, Jesus, I will follow you all the way, even to the cross, my own cross. Now, Jesus states in verse 27 and 33, he says, whoever does not carry their cross and follow me, and whoever does not give up everything cannot be my disciple. Jesus had previously laid out in Luke chapter 9, verse 23, whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves, take up their cross and follow me daily. So this involves three essential aspects. And yes, I've got the first one up there. Number one, it means to deny yourself. Now, what does it mean to deny yourself? It really means saying no to self. For example, I'm sure those of us, not just who are pastors, but who have journeyed with others in their younger years of faith, but we would still get experienced Christians like it. You might have shared something with them. They're like, no, I don't really want to do that. I don't want to forgive that person. And you've got to draw alongside them and not say you must forgive, because that never works. But it's getting them to understand that in actual fact, Jesus calls us to forgive. So to deny ourselves is really to say, I don't want to forgive them, but no, I must forgive. I really want to hold a grudge towards this person. And Jesus says, no, you can't hold a grudge. And so realistically, to deny self is to say no to these types of attitudes and thoughts of the heart. So denying self is really the decision to resist self-serving impulses in order that we can follow in the way of Jesus. And as we go deeper and wider with Jesus, I believe he takes us on a journey where he reveals more and more of, those wrong attitudes that we have. I don't think we have time this morning to discuss this, but you might want to take a screenshot and think about this later. But what might Jesus be asking you to give up in order to come and follow him more fully? Next is taking up your cross. Now, clearly, Jesus is not stating that we're all going to die on a cross here like he did. But the principle here is that we have all been called to die to the sinful desires of our heart. And so every day, this is how I look at it. I'll try and make it really basic for you. But every day I wake up and I make that conscious effort to turn from my sin. I don't do it perfectly. I'm no different. This preacher here needs saving as much as anybody else. But what it does mean is, let me go for a simple one. Lust. It does mean for the person who is wrestling with lust, and lust doesn't have to be a man or female. We drive out to Bridgewater. I'm going to be honest with you. And there is a house out there. And oh my goodness, seriously, I have a lust issue. My heart just drops when I see it. And it comes from a time in my childhood where I thought, this house means you've made it. It's an old Georgian, Victorian type house. There's another one, I think it's the old mayor's house, but we'll leave that one alone. That needs a lot of work on it. But for me, it's waking up in the morning saying, John, we're going to turn away from that. And maybe for you, it's saying, hey, I'm going to turn away from adultery, or I'm going to turn away from pornography, or I'm going to turn away from actually really desiring that 1968 F-250 pickup truck. For the drunkard, it could be that today I'm going to make a conscious effort to turn away from the bottle, or maybe I'm going to turn away from gambling or cheating or gaming, or actually being negative. In actual fact, if I'm going to critique the church in an area, maybe that's the area that God is calling me to fill in. So rather than critique it, I'm now going to step into it. So the question here is, what part of following Jesus do you find the hardest? Because there are certain aspects of following Jesus I find really difficult. They're a wrestle, but he calls me to come and to deny self and take up my cross. Lastly, there is the following Jesus. To follow Jesus is to become like him in every aspect and to do the things that he has called us to do. It's interesting because the parable before this one is actually about going out and proclaiming Jesus and sharing Jesus. And yet so many of us don't want to do that. But here's the thing I do want to say, so I don't just make it all about the doing. It is about the being before it's ever about the doing. And God is far more interested in who you are becoming than where you are going. Let me say that again. God is far more interested in who you are becoming than where you are going. Think about Matthew 4:19. Come and follow me. And what does he say? I will make you fishers of men. Notice Jesus does not say, come and follow me to Jerusalem, or come and follow me to heaven, or come and follow me to McDonald's. He doesn't say that. He says, come and follow me and I will make you. So Jesus is more interested in who we are becoming than where we are going. I have learned in my life, and I have not arrived, but I have learned that if I'm becoming more like Jesus, everything else will take care of itself. He'll guide me and he'll lead me. Now, don't get me wrong. Discipleship is about a journey, but it's not so much about a destination. It's more about transformation. So God is far more interested in who we are becoming than where we are going. Yet again, don't get me wrong. Does God have a plan and a purpose for our life? Absolutely, God has a plan and a purpose for our life. But his ultimate will is about becoming more like Jesus and doing the things that Jesus did through our love for one another, as Paul has shared before. And of course, our love for God, which is the primary one. So to sum up then, discipleship is more about transformation than it is about destination. Now, I'll finish with this one. I've always battled, and I know I've only got 1 minute, so I'll finish here. Jesus throws out a high challenge in verse 34 and 35, and he uses a powerful image of salt. Now, salt in Jesus' day had very high value because it was both a preserver and a flavorer of food. And without getting too technical, because I realize I'm out of time now, in Jesus' day and age, some of the salt came from the Dead Sea, and it was mixed with partial sand and salt. And so it became inferior, and it was good for nothing. And what Jesus appears to be saying here through counting the cost of following him is if we don't actually count the cost to see whether we're willing to go to the very end and to allow the Spirit to lead us to wherever he would call us to go, we then become ineffective. We lose our edge. And so as Christians, we are called then to not just count the cost, but as we count the cost, to die to self, to come and to love the world with Jesus. So that as we proclaim the gospel message and as we do good deeds, people can come and see that God is good.